Tonight on the Pioneer Sideline, the men's soccer team starts off conference play with a major upset as the women's team looks to get their first home win. The volleyball team looks to continue their string of conference sets won, and the rugby team looks to finally get over the hump and beat CMU. All that and more as we head on down to the Pioneer Sideline. Welcome to the Pioneer Sideline. I'm your host, Kyle Anthony. The men's soccer team was set to start off conference play, did so in style with an upset. Let's throw it to Zach Aaron with who we're able to beat.
Well, Kyle, this past week has been the busiest and most important week of the season so far for the Pioneers men's soccer team. It started last Tuesday as the Pioneers traveled to West Virginia Tech. The Pioneers won the game by a score of 2-1. Lucas Silva, who was named KIAC Offensive Player of the Week, scored both goals for the Pioneers, once again showing his dominance and importance to the team. The only goal for West Virginia Tech was by Glenroy Miller in the 62nd minute. Zach Borzovoy, who was named Defensive Player of the Week in the KIAC, continued his tear as well, putting up 13 saves on Thursday. The Pioneers came back home to play Geneva College. Both teams put up a good fight in the match. The match was scoreless up until the 82nd minute when Jeremy Troutman got a lucky bounce after the Pioneers tried clearing the ball, and Troutman had room to put up a high shot from 20 yards out for the only goal of the game. The Pioneers dropped this game 1-0. Then Saturday was the headlining match of the week. The Pioneers met with new KIAC rival number 7 ranked Rio Grande. This is the team that beat the Pioneers both times last season, the latter of which caused Point Park to be eliminated from the NAIA National Tournament. The Pioneers knew what was at stake and they showed up to play. Lucas Godinho and Max Flick both helped their team's cause by scoring in the 65th and 82nd minutes respectively. Rio Grande then started a comeback, scoring in the 87th minute, but it wouldn't be enough as the Pioneers held on and ended up upsetting the Red Storm 2-1. The Red Storm dominated in the shots category by a margin of 21-9. But once again, Zach Borzovoy had a strong match, putting up 8 saves. That match pushed the Pioneers to 5-2 overall and 1-0 in the KIAC. The Pioneers now have a week and a half off before their next game when they host Cincinnati Christian at home on October 4th.
Well, Zach, what can we expect in the road ahead for this Pioneers team?
Well, on the road ahead, Cincinnati Christian has always been a formidable opponent for the Pioneers. They've always given Point Park a little bit of trouble, but Point Park has always been a force to be reckoned with in the KIAC, and much of the road ahead is KIAC play, so I expect the Pioneers to do quite well in the next few weeks.
Now, Zach, for this team, their new style of defense seems to be working out good. Is that the truth, or is their opponents just not as good as them?
Well, that definitely can't be said. That number 7 ranking for Rio Grande did not lie on Saturday. Some may argue that they actually dominated the game. They definitely dominated possessions and shots, as I said. But Point Park just was able to get the upper hand. And once again, I keep referring to this every time we meet, Kyle. It's the defense that's been making the big difference this whole semester and this whole season so far.
Now, should we expect to see this Pioneers team in the top 25 coming up soon?
I think after that win over Rio Grande, I think that's definitely reason to put the Pioneers in the top 25. I don't see any reason why they can't. A 5-2 record, 1 overall, is definitely top 25 worthy, but that's up to the NAIA voting committee to decide.
Thanks, Zach. The Carnegie Mellon Tardans have been the crossroad rival that the Point Park rugby team just has never been able to find a way to beat. Josh Krupp rucks over to tell us if they could get the big win.
Yeah, Kyle, it was a long-awaited and highly anticipated matchup for the Bison Rugby Club as they took on rival Carnegie Mellon University on Friday. The Tartans had never lost to Point Park entering the game, but were still winless on the 2014 season. Point Park held CMU to 0 points in the first half, with their defense almost impossible to run on. Point Park was winning the rucks and making big tackles to keep the Tartans off the scoreboard. They too, however, were unable to put points on the scoreboard after a number of turnovers and penalties, making the game scoreless at the half. Point Park would come out firing in the second half. Only 4 minutes in, they were supporting each other and pushing towards the goal line when sophomore Jeremiah Elsas was stopped within inches of a try. Point Park would then control the ball for almost the entire first 10 minutes of the second half. At the halfway point in the half, Point Park was able to catch a break. Jake Como picked the ball up after a scrum on the CMU 45-yard line. After moving past a few defenders, he was in the clear and carried the ball the entire way to the field to score and put Point Park ahead for what would be the final score of 5-0. Now, after allowing 59 points in their past 2 games, shutting out their rival Carnegie Mellon was a big step in the right direction for Point Park. One step that Point Park did not take in this game was improving their offense. Last week against Geneva College, Point Park wanted to involve their big men more in the offense. Fatigue set in and they were unable to pull off the victory against Geneva. They stuck with the same game plan this week, and while there were some improvements on the field, there weren't any on the scoreboard. Multiple players said after the game that the adrenaline kicked in and they didn't feel as tired as they did against Geneva. The lack of scoring is something that Point Park hopes to address ahead of this week's matchup against Fairmont State. Now, Kyle, one factor that played a big role in Point Park's win against Carnegie Mellon was the fans. Shuttle drivers estimate that over 100 students made the trip to CMU for the game after the tailgate that was held in Village Park. Fans were there loud and rowdy the entire game, and that really gave Point Park a major boost.
Josh, what can we expect in the road ahead for this rugby team?
Well, as I said, we'll take on Fairmont State University in West Virginia this week for Fairmont's homecoming game. Fairmont is 2-1 on the season, with their only loss coming last week against undefeated Franciscan. Franciscan gave them a 48-0 loss. Now, for a good comparison between Fairmont State and Point Park, Fairmont State topped Carnegie Mellon in week 1, 62-3. After Point Park is done with Fairmont State, they'll travel to Franciscan, who is undefeated, and then undefeated Robert Morris. And they'll close the season with hopefully a win against Allegheny College, who still is winless on the year.
Now, who have been some key players for this Pioneers team so far in the season?
Well, scrummer Jake Como really has been one of the best players on this team so far. He scored the last 3 tries for Point Park, and they haven't really been able to stop him. His quickness and his awareness on the field has really been key for the Pioneers.
Thanks, Josh. After the break, the women's soccer team has yet to win a home game this year. Could they finally find a way to bring home the W? And the volleyball team has been a shutout machine, winning their last 20-plus sets in a row. Find out if they could keep it going.